As I see it, class warfare, the only resort to right-wing doom? It's worth it. How to talk to your right-wing relatives, friends, and neighbors, and other books written by Egberto Willis. Welcome to Politics Done Right. My name is Egberto Willis, your host. Good morning, Houston. Good morning, Harris County. Good morning to the great state of Texas. Good morning to the United States of America. Good morning to the entire world receiving our signals via the magic of El Internet, created by whom? We the people, formerly known as the ARPANET, which was, of course, a Defense Department government project and now controlled by the plutocracy. Why is it that we always pay for the risk? We, the people, pay for the risk. Then the plutocracy comes in and says, oh, we invest in bringing it to market and we did X, Y, Z, and that justifies our profit. And we sit back and we believe and we believe and we believe. Let's wise up, folks. But anyway, without further ado, let's pass it on to the geniuses in el estudio with el señor Jacques Van Beber and that woman that only needs one name, Mayana. Good morning, folks.
Good morning, Egberto. How are you? Good morning, Mayana.
Good morning, guys.
I am doing fine. How you guys doing out there in the studio?
Well, we had a little bit of a rough start. The cursor wouldn't get on the screen, so it was
If you can imagine.
pretty sloppy. All right, Mayana's going to
Well, not sloppy. The cursor couldn't get on the screen. It's not sloppy. The cursor couldn't get on the screen. That's not a sloppy thing. It's just.
I think he said that. I think he said it was the screen was sloppy, not mine. I think you just said an. I think you said an impossibility, Mayana. All right,
Yeah.
that's an impossibility. Anyway, what's up, guys?
Well, today I'm gonna read the topic that you have covered on the show because he has something to say. So
All right,
today's
let's hear it.
topics covered on the show. Today's programming examines how conservative power consolidates across education, media, and energy. As Texas finalizes school voucher rules, online influences warn of coordinated youth radicalization. And the Trump administration pauses offshore while. What's this? Oh, sorry. And the Trump administration pauses offshore wind while expanding fossil fuels. A pattern emerges. Public good gets sacrificed for ideology and profit.
Ouch. Sad, sad, sad.
So to that, I say there is nothing more sinister than the fossil fuel industry, from the genocide in Gaza to the Iraqi wars, to tensions in Iran, and the piracy of Venezuelan oil tankers without congressional approval means that the U.S. of A's corporate fascist government and its useful idiot Donald Trump are operating outside the rule of law and endangering the lives of U.S. citizens and peoples of the world. He is halting the progress of U.S. clean energy wind farms offshore in favor of dirty fossil fuel entrenched status quo. As Ford halts EV development, this all means America is headed in the wrong direction, as the stubborn choice to keep pushing a fossil fuel future for the benefit of a few fossil fuel oligarchs, further driving the world off a climate cliff, ruining the future of our children and their children. Citizens, open your eyes and see the big picture of the future and act before it's too late. We got to vote them out. Just got to
Yes.
vote these heathens out.
Yeah, we got to be careful with our votes because sometimes, we vote against ourselves. So let's make sure we don't do that this time.
We have to try that, Mayana. That is so true. That is so true. But we vote against our interests too often because, again, and I hate to constantly hit the mainstream media, but because of the fear that the mainstream media has to buck the system, if you will, as opposed to doing its job as the fourth estate to go out there and really tell things the way they are, it really influences how people vote against their own interests, as you said, Mayanna. That's what we are here for, and that's why we have not have to, we must. That's why we must keep growing our footprint to tell things as they really are, because only then can people make the correct decision for themselves, just knowing the truth. And the problem is that too often we don't have that. Jack brought up about Ford backing down on significantly scaling back on EV. You know, um, we always and Jack, you changed where I wanted to start, but I think that one statement tied into the what I'm going to talk about, wind energy and where it takes us, is really probative. Because here's the deal: we are talking about, we have very high tariffs right now, and I would say to some extent I can understand the high tariff on EVs, electronic these EVs. I can understand that we screwed up as a country. Our electric vehicle industry fell behind. It's, remember though, that tariff mechanism is, I want everybody to hear this. It's an anti-capitalist motion notion, because again, it goes against the principle about supposedly the efficient allocation of resources. The efficient allocation of resources is for us to go ahead and just import a whole bunch of EVs that are much less expensive from China. That is what capitalism dictates that we do. Do I agree with that? No. I want us to have a robust EV market. Now, we leave these things for the private sector to do. But right now, the private sector, as Jack just pointed out, is failing. With with Ford scaling back on EVs, when China is scaling up, when China is the resource that the rest of the world is using for EV. That is telling us as a country that we will be that much further behind in EVs, and we will never have the efficient allocation of resources when it comes to EVs, because again, here we are. As China expands, we throw a whole lot of tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles, and at the same time, because it's not in a very profitable state, our private sector is backing off of EVs. It make sense. It makes no sense, and it speaks ill of the future when it comes to our ability to join the markets of the future, the electric market of the future. Because again, we're doing nothing to make things better, and that ties into the story. One of the stories that I'm covering that Mayanna read, and that has to do with Trump and not uh, Trump and wind energy, right? Look, uh, Trump willy nilly is going ahead pausing a lot of not a lot of electronic, a lot of environmental programs. And why is he doing that? Because as these programs grow, guess what happens? Our dependence falls. And when you have the dependence of oil falling, what does that mean to the oil companies? Their source of revenues fall. But were these oil companies doing what they claim capitalism is supposed to do, which is the efficient allocation of resources, which means as oil use decline, as we see the externalities of oil, we start investing, using our excess profits to invest in alternative forms of energy. So as those alternatives grow, for those who want that to be in the form of corporations, the corporations simply transition from oil to these new forms of energy. There was a time that BP, through its marketing, was trying to say that that's what they're going to do. British Petroleum, they actually made in their advertising, they made those symbols mean something else. It wasn't BP in their advertising, it was Beyond Petroleum. Have you seen an ad from BP recently speaking about Beyond Petroleum? I haven't. If you have, please let me know, but I haven't. So it is important for us to understand that where we lead and how we lead can determine our futures. And right now, what we have done with the election of Donald Trump is put us backward. I want to just read a piece of this Al Jazeera article and then we'll proceed. Trump pauses more offshore wind projects, citing national security concerns. What? These guys just say stuff. The administration of United States President Donald Trump has suspended leases on 5 large-scale offshore wind projects over what it called national security concerns, sending shares of offshore wind companies plunging. The suspension on Monday of the Atlantic Coast projects, which was already under construction, was the latest blow for offshore wind developers that have faced repeated disruptions under Trump. The U.S. president has said he finds wind turbines ugly, costly, and inefficient. All of those are lies, while pursuing a larger pivot away from renewable energy. The man is pivoting away from renewable energy. Shares in Danish energy firm Ørsted, which owns 2 of the affected projects, traded down more than 12% by late morning, with the companies like Dominion and Equinor also trading lower. The U.S. Department of Interior said that Department of Defense had raised concerns that the movement of huge turbine blades offshore wind projects, as well as highly reflective that hold them down, could cause radar interference that could make it hard for the military to identify and locate threats. That's a lie. From somebody, let me just tell you this, all right? It is true that there will be change in signals, whether it's be sonic, electromagnetic, meaning bombarding that area with let's say radar, etc., would look different. But guess what we would have? We will have a footprint of we would know, anybody writing software and putting in would know what the baseline footprint of whatever you have in the ocean looks like. A big wave in the ocean gives a footprint signaling on radar that's dependent on mass, sending something out and the signal coming back because it hit some form of mass, etc. That is an outright. And again, when we don't teach science in schools as we should anymore, they can come up with stupid statements like this and just have people believe it. Okay? We have things called signatures, right? Every solid piece of something getting a radar hit has some sort of a signal. A windmill would have a signal in its static state, and it'll have a signature in its state of motion, what it looks like on these equipment in its state of motion, and those signals can be extracted from whatever else occurs. It is a lie. And I don't even have to look at studies to know that this is a lie. That is a lie of physics. Okay? The prime duty of the United States government is to protect the American people, Secretary of the Interior Doug Burgum said in a statement. The pause will give relevant federal agencies time to work with leaseholders and state partners to assess the possibility of mitigating the national security risk posed by these projects. The pause will affect Ørsted Revolution Wind and Sunrise Wind projects, Avangrid and Copenhagen Infrastructure Partners, Vineyard Wind 2 project, Dominion Energy Coastal Virginia Offshore Wind, and Equinor Empire. I want you guys to notice a tie-in that I'm going to make here. Where are a lot of wind companies located again? They're Genesis, a lot of them, in a country called Denmark. in a country called Denmark. And what is Donald Trump trying to do right now? Somehow get a foothold in Greenland. And what's special about Greenland again? It is currently under, and I am not I don't believe in colonialism, right? But the state of the state of the geography right now is the state of the geography right now. And right now the state of the geography is that Greenland is under the auspices of Denmark. But let me finish with the windmill and then I'll try to do some tie-ins there. The pause will affect Ørsted Revolution Wind and Sunrise projects, Avangrid and Copenhagen, and many other. Many other. The National Ocean Industries Association, a trade group representing offshore wind development, urged the administration to end the pause quickly. The regulatory process involves a rigorous framework for assessing the national security implication of proposed projects, and every project under construction has already undergone review by the Defense Department and NOI. Ørsted, Equinor, and Copenhagen Infrastructure were not immediately available for comment. Dominion said the suspension will threaten grid reliability for its Virginia customers, including military bases and data center power intelligence. The anti-wind stand of the Trump administration. Monday's move was the latest instance of the administration ordering a pause to offshore wind projects already under construction. Again, one of the things that corporations and business want is stability. Trump wakes up today and he thinks windmills are ugly and he stops the project. He thinks for type of solar panels he doesn't like, he stops the project. A lot of folks in New Hampshire I think it was New Hampshire or Maine, I don't remember which state, electricians that voted for Donald Trump got laid off. Why? Because he doesn't like renewable energy, so he stops it. And this is not only inconsistent for free enterprise and capitalism. Remember, I believe in free enterprise, not cap. I believe in free. They're different, even though or businesses and the media would like to conflate the two. One gives you freedom, the other one takes your freedom away. Remember that. One gives you freedom, the other one takes your freedom away. They don't advertise it that way, but look at the structure of corporations. Look at the structure of laws that are written for corporations that tell you that if you decide to harm a corporation's way of being, they can actually sue you to recover what they deem are lost income based on something you have done. They don't tell you that, or they don't teach you that when they're teaching you capitalism, do they? But that is the law. The thing about it is most of us don't have that influence to do things. But your city, if your city goes ahead and put a path that breaks some corporation's pipeline or tells a corporation they have to move a pipeline, the city can be sued and they can say that'll have a material effect on our corporate business. And as such, we are suing the state for damages. A lot of people don't understand things can happen like that and have happened like that. But anyhow, let's get back to the subject of wind and Donald Trump and more. So here we go. The guy has put doubt in all these companies that have already invested billions of dollars in offshore windmill that will also bring very much needed electricity to the East Coast and other places, because Donald Trump is using the pretext of national security. Like he's blowing up ships in the middle of the Pacific, in the Pacific off of Colombia, in the Atlantic off of Venezuela, under the theory that somehow these are drug boats and we're protecting America. All lies. We have a foreign policy based on lies. We have domestic policies based on lies. And we continue to accept it. We continue to accept it. So anyhow, folks, I'm going to continue, but just let me let you know the telephone number is 713-526-5738, and we are taking calls early, 713-526-5738. Now, I want to tie some of this in to Greenland. Greenland is not a territory of Denmark. It falls under a special relationship. And actually, the relationship is not as close, but similar to what we have with Puerto Rico. As you know, Puerto Rico is a U.S. territory. Greenland is considered a quasi Denmark territory, though in 2009 they got a higher level of autonomy. So, in effect, they're closer to an independent country than is Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico would be closer that to a United States state if Congress passed laws, etc. But Danish, rather, Greenland citizens, hear this out well. Greenland citizens are constitutional citizens of Denmark. In other words, Denmark citizens have absolutely all rights of any Danish citizen born in Denmark. So does Greenland citizens. Greenland, however, have its own parliament, autonomy, except for foreign policy, etc. They run most of their own stuff in Greenland, almost like a very independent state. Puerto Rico, while everybody in Puerto Rico are United States citizens, that was done by statute, not constitutionally. In other words, the statute says born in the territory of Puerto Rico makes you a citizen. But Congress at any time could revoke that because it's not constitutional. It is by statute, meaning it's made into law. Difference. But consider this. Consider, given that loose relationship, consider some other country going into Puerto Rico or the U.S. Virgin Islands and trying to convince these folks to separate themselves from the United States of America. That is what we are doing in Denmark. We're trying to tell them they can, by the way, the citizens of Greenland who are Danish citizens by constitution, they can decide to vote that territory to be an independent, altogether independent nation. They could if they wanted to, but they don't. The last poll was 85% of them want to remain under the current condition relationship with Denmark. And that's why it is so upsetting, not only to Greenland, but also to 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 uh, to Denmark that the United States is trying to get involved in some sort of an issue with Greenland. Again, and why would they do that? They would do that mostly because, just like we want to get into the business of Venezuela, not because of drugs, but because of Venezuela's natural resources. And it's not only about oil. Venezuela is a country so rich with natural resources that we have pushed into poverty. Not people, socialism through Venezuela into poverty. That's a lie. That is a lie. Uh, Norway is not in poverty, and Norway control its natural resources in a social manner. People benefit from the sovereign fund out of the petroleum from Norway. That is the kind of stuff Hugo Chavez was trying to build in Venezuela. But would the American government allow that to happen? No. Look at what they're doing right now. Well, look, Maduro has been there long enough, and it's been decades we've been trying to retake the natural resources of Venezuela. So we put an armada in front of Venezuela and we start pirating oil out of Venezuela. So in Denmark, the Danish are reacting. Officials in Denmark and Greenland were furious on Monday that President Trump has appointed a special envoy to Greenland, part of his efforts to take over the semi-autonomous Danish territory. Mr. Trump announced on social media late Sunday that he was appointing Governor Jeff Landry of Louisiana, a political ally, to the position. Denmark's foreign minister quickly criticized the move as totally unacceptable and said he would summon the American ambassador in Copenhagen for an explanation. It appeared that first time the United States had appointed a special envoy to Greenland. That puts the island of fewer than 60,000 inhabitants in a small group of foreign policy priorities, including Ukraine and the Middle East, for which Trump has appointed trusted allies. In other words, people that have no experience in doing this kind of a stuff. Mr. Landry quickly made it clear that he understood what Mr. Trump wanted from him. It's an honor to serve you in the volunteer position to make Greenland a part of the United States. I want you to pause there. Imagine another country coming out and saying, we are sending an attaché to Puerto Rico to speak to the governor of Puerto Rico in order to talk to Puerto Rico about becoming a part of, let's say, Denmark. So Denmark sends its warships over to Puerto Rico and an envoy and say, hey, how would you like to become a part of Denmark? I mean, it's not quite a one-to-one because there's some more statutory things that would be of impact. But you get the point that I'm talking about. Greenland has critical minerals that have attracted the interest of top officials in the Trump administration, and it served as a base for American military operations during World War II and the Cold War. There is still a remote American base on the island, northern side. In this quote, Mr. Trump wrote, Jeff understands how essential Greenland is to our national security. But appointment drew condemnation from Greenland and further deteriorated the relationship between the United States and Denmark, which used to be close allies. And not only that, Denmark is a part of the, what again? European Union, it's part of the NATO. And this is simply Trump's nuttiness, right? You cannot annex other countries. Prime Minister Nielsen of Denmark and Prime Minister Jens Frederik Nielsen of Greenland said in a joint statement on Monday. Not even by invoking international security, Greenland belongs to the Greenlanders and the United States must not take over Greenland. Mr. Nielsen added in a statement on Facebook that the appointment may sound big, but doesn't change anything for us at home. We decide our future ourselves. Denmark has exercised various forms of control over Greenland for centuries and absorbed it into its kingdom in 1953. Today, Greenland manages its own domestic affairs with project subsidies up to 60% by Denmark, which also manages its defense and foreign policy. Many Greenland's leaders support independence but differ on how soon that should happen and whether to build a closer relationship with the United States. Lars Løkke Rasmussen, Denmark's foreign minister, told Danish television on Monday that he was deeply upset by Trump's announcement and he planned to summon Ken Howery, who became the American ambassador. And there's much more to the article that I won't get into directly. But again, what we're doing here is tantamount to simply going to an independent country and saying, because we believe you to be in our national interest to own you, to make you a part of us, we'll just do it. What happens when we decide that the location of France, or even let's say the location, let's see something more sensible. Let's say that we figured out that the location of Spain on the Mediterranean makes it of such national interest to us that we need to control it. You think we would do it? I mean, we have to start we have to start looking at things the way they really are. This makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. None whatsoever. So, Denmark, thank you for starting us where you started us, both Jack and Mayana. I think it is high time that we start looking at these things from an American citizen point of view, and that is we have an administration that is dearly pulling us back. Numero uno, when it comes to energy, as I pointed out. Notice all the Danish companies that are into wind power. And numero dos, when we talk about sovereignty of countries whom we want to steal their resources, which is exactly what's happening. This has nothing to do with capitalism. This has nothing to do with free enterprise. This has everything to do with imperialism and the theft of the resources of others. And when we look at it under that context, when we look at it that context, we should do something about it. And that starts in the electoral process, and that begins or that continues in the elections that we'll start having here in Texas in March, the primaries. It's important. It is important that those that are listening here make sure and populate those primaries with your bodies and ensure that the people get elected are forward thinking people. And who are the forward thinking people? By definition, progressives. Not no ifs, no buts. By definition, progressives. And that is what the country is calling for now. That is what the country is begging for now. That is what the country is urging for. I see that we have two calls coming in. That what I want to do is hold off on the other two subjects just to give that a chance to come in, and then we'll go ahead with the other two subjects of the morning. But when I tell you guys that the tying in Greenland with windmills and oil with windmills, all of this stuff is tied in together. Minerals, natural resources, and more. Let's go ahead and go to line one with Bobby. Come on in, Bobby, line number one.
Hi, good morning, Egberto.
Good morning, sir. How you doing?
I was watching the other. Good, thank you. On the way to work, I was watching this thing the other day where they were talking about. Well, first of all, I've seen this one video where this guy was saying that the United States has stagnated technologically on purpose to maintain the status quo. If you were to invent a solar panel, let's just say that has 90% efficiency, where the current ones, whatever they're at, if you go try to patent that, they're going to sequester it. They're going to hide it away for national security reasons, because if you come up with a new, better way to create energy, that is a national security threat, because you're particularly going to disrupt the economy. Just like if you were to build a tire for a car that could last the lifetime of the tire, they probably wouldn't let you release it because it would put so many people out of business. But we got to come to, I think, as a society, to a point. I mean, the senators are looking at UFOs getting hit by Hellfire missiles. Little UFOs are coming and following them. Like, we live in a different world. Like, I feel like there's so much hidden technology from others and that we have created that it's just being held back. And at a certain point, we're going to completely destroy ourselves, or we're going to have to move forward.
I don't even think that's conspiracy theory. I mean, I always look at, as an example, battery technology. Why is battery technology so poor? I'm talking about from in a relative standpoint, right? And why is it that we have it that you get all these batteries and you throw it away, and you get these batteries and you throw away? There is this concept in American capitalism and production. I don't remember the term that they use, but it is that products have a fixed lifespan, even if that fixed lifespan is arbitrary. There's a phrase for it, and I can't remember what that phrase is. But they're designed
where they make things fail.
Right, they make things fail.
Not redundancy, but there's a
right. The light bulb is a perfect example. They purposefully made the filament of the light bulb last less time. The tungsten in the filament in the bulb,
exactly,
they made to last less. And again, remember what I mentioned about corporations being able to sue for saying you are responsible for bringing down our profits, or the Senate would step in and say, well, this would be too disruptive to our market. That presents a national security, so you can't do it. The idea that we have absolute freedom in this country and in any one of these purported capitalist countries is false. It is absolutely false and provably so, right? And you pointed out
I
something that to some will
yeah
sound like a conspiracy theory, but in many instances, I think it's quite obvious. Anything else, Bobby?
yeah. If you can Google it. Yeah, like like what type of inventions do they hold back? And yeah,
Well,
the solar
the
panels are
other thing
actually
that
on
they
there. And
right, the other thing that they do, Bobby, is corporations. You invent something, right? And if they think it's viable, they immediately buy it and end it. In other words, they buy it up and do
yes,
nothing with it.
exactly. That's what I'm talking about.
Okay? Yeah.
Exactly. So the
Right.
technologies are there to help create the utopia that you want, but it's going to upset the people who are already rich, and so
Right.
they prevent that from happening. That's all. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Bobby. You have a wonderful rest of your day. Let's go to Jimmy, brother Jimmy. How you doing, sir?
So happy holidays to everybody.
Happy
And
holidays,
on the
Jimmy.
issue of the environment, Trump always does the opposite of what's good for the environment. It's good to use wind power and solar power. That reduces burning fossil fuels, which adds to global warming. So Trump is on the wrong side of the issue of good environment. And also, I'm still waiting for the Supreme Court to rule that Trump cannot add these tariffs all by himself. That's a tax, and that's a job of Congress to raise taxes. So when is the Supreme Court going to rule on him using tariffs?
No, you're absolutely right. And by the way, I just before you finish, Jimmy, I want to point out that Jack Van Beber reminded me of the word. It's called designed obsolescence. Designed obsolescence. In other words, the product is not really obsolete, but they make it obsolete so that you'll have to buy another. You'll see that in telephones. Remember, there's a time, Jimmy, when you could take the battery out of the phone easily so that you could replace it. Not anymore. Tell me a phone where you can actually easily replace the batteries. Now, there are third party companies that learn how to replace batteries, and other phone companies have sued them because they're opening the phones and taking out the batteries and changing them. I need to interject that. Continue, Jimmy. Sorry for interrupting you.
I have an iPhone, and I never need to replace the battery. I just charge it up every night. The battery seems like it's lasted 5 years already, so I can't. I don't see the battery need to be replaced. But anyway,
a lot of time, it all depends on your. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I bought an electric car. The Cadillac was made in Mexico, so they're keeping the cost down by producing them down in Mexico. But I like the fact that it's very quiet. I'm not polluting the air anymore. It has a lot of safety features, and if I take my eyes off the road, it makes my seat vibrate. So I have my eyes, keep my eyes on the road.
Jimmy, when did you buy that car, Jimmy? When did you buy your electric car, buddy?
I bought it in August.
Wow,
it's
I
traded it.
the next HPJC meeting we have in person, I'm coming to drive in your car. All right.
Sure, I can be glad to give you back. Like I say, it has a lot of modern features. It unlocks itself when I walk to the car. It locks itself when I leave the car. It has all kinds of features that make it safer, and so I do. I love the car, and I'm not polluting the air anymore.
Good. What did you buy? Which one did you buy? Which one did you buy?
It's called. Oh gosh.
Don't worry about it. Tell me later, Jimmy. Tell me later. Hey, look, Jimmy's 90-something-year-old guy. And his memory is like my memory. I probably couldn't remember the name of my car right now. Anyway, Jimmy, look,
okay.
I got to go to Donald, okay?
Here's the name of it. The Cadillac Optic, OPTIC.
All right.
Optic.
Next time we meet, you're going to have to take me for a ride in that one, buddy. But we'll talk later. All right, Jimmy?
I will for sure. Okay. Have a happy holiday and a Merry Christmas.
Happy holiday, Merry Christmas, my brother. Let's go to Brother Donald. Donald, come on in.
Okay, Berto. When you build your utopia,
yes,
you're going to be just like Omar Gaddafi and a whole bunch of other ones that have tried it, and the first time you don't bend your knee to whoever's in the White House, because it doesn't matter which left two
Party.
choices that we have, you're going to
Yes.
end up with the same thing he did. And all the excuses and all the justifications, if you got to justify something, 9 times out of 10, you're wrong. And what's the quickest way to get rid of certain companies? Now, I'm sure when the stock crashes and it becomes, worthless, they'll be happy to buy up all the stock, and then all of a sudden wind turbines would be a good idea once
There
they
you
get
go.
utilized. Same thing
You
we
get
do
it.
with Ukraine. We put all the rat urination creation for the deaf and all that other stuff so we could peel the onion. What happens is it doesn't matter which party you're with. We're left with the raggedy skin and the little weasel thing on the bottom and the top trying to make something out of it. It's just the way it works.
Hey, brother Don, let me tell you, one of the reasons I do this and many others do this, right, is you're so right. I'm glad you brought up Gaddafi because everybody looked at Gaddafi as a pariah, which is a false thing. Gaddafi's major problem was that he was going to create a system that gives more control to these oil producing and other nations in Africa. There was going to be the United African dollar and all that kind of stuff that he was putting into place, that just like BRICS is challenging the American financial system because America was dependent on petrodollars, that would have, there was a lot that Gaddafi was doing to try to unite the countries in Africa again, like what unions do, right? You put unions together to have more power so that externals can't come out and demand certain things like we can in Venezuela, etc. And he met his demise. So you're correct about that. But you know what? That isn't Americans doing that. That is America's plutocracy directing its government to do that. But an educated America will not elect people who inherently have that modus operandi in the first place. And that's the utopia you and I and everybody else need to work on building. Those of us in the know. And I know many think it's wishful thinking. We actually thought that getting rid of a monarchy was wishful thinking. Baby steps, baby steps, baby steps. Anything else, Don?
You didn't get rid of the monarchy because they still control the central banking system and all the other. That's where the orb is. See, that's what I'm saying. And then a certain people that get their victim card and then it goes down a few points, all of a sudden something happens and they regain their victim card. And then they look at, and it's just pitting people against people. And that is just what they do. That's why it's called politics. And I'm glad you do what you do. And you have a Merry Christmas, and thank you for all the good hard work.
Thank you, my brother. Merry Christmas to you too as well. Donald is right. Donald is right. But you know what? We have to keep moving forward. And if you don't work at it, it doesn't happen. I didn't salute my beautiful people in the chat. Para ver quién está aquí. You know who comes to me right out the bat first, right? Our teachers. Did I see any of my teachers in the room today? I love you all, but I like to salute my teachers because you know what I think about teachers. But anyway, I don't see teachers in the room right now, but from Joe from Los Angeles, California, welcome aboard. Lisa Blair, Atlanta, Georgia. Lee the Bearcat, Austin, Texas. Eric Kingwood, Texas. We also have para ver, ¿quién más está aquí que conozco? Reyes Núñez. I don't remember where you are. Welcome aboard. Of course, we have Harry Denson, Missouri City, Texas. Marnie, I never remember where you're from. M. Hope, these are Substack now. Lynette, how you doing, Lynette? Astadian, Marnie, Christy McCarthy, Cinda Daly. Oh, too many on Substack to call out right now, but love you all. Thank you for being here. I got some important stuff for you. For those of you that are in Texas, you know that that the governor finally got his way and passed vouchers. He finally got his way and he passed vouchers. Let me tell you something, folks. I sent a text to Molly Cook, or Senator Molly Cook, yesterday. Molly Cook, if you're listening, Senator, you did not respond, but you did a great TikTok that I love what you did with the TikTok. But I'd love for you to be on the program to further explain this to your Texas constituents, not only your constituents but all of Texas, because this is more important. And I believe that one of the reasons we are in this position is that, in fact, enough of you, our great politicians out there, the progressive politicians here in Texas and elsewhere, do not make yourselves sufficiently available to inform our constituents of the evil occurring in the bodies that you serve. In that light, let me go ahead and play what she had to say about vouchers, which is very, very important. Here we go.
Comptroller just finalized all of the rules for our $1 billion voucher program in Texas, and I want to walk you through what that means for public schools, private schools, and everybody who might be trying to get a voucher. Private schools and vendors can start applying next month, and then families can start applying on February 4th. The application window will run for about 6 weeks, and then the state plans to put out decisions on or before May 1st. The rules allow private school networks from outside of Texas to move into Texas, open facilities, and start receiving funds as early as next year, as long as they've just been accredited somewhere in the past 2 years. Pre-K students will get vouchers greater than the amount of $10,000, but a lot of the child care centers around the state are not actually qualified to receive those funds. For students with disabilities, they can receive vouchers up to $30,000. Families must complete a full special education evaluation and an individualized education program, or IEP, through their public school district. And of course, we know that this process can take months. To get priority in the first lottery round, these families just need to produce a doctor's note or a Social Security letter. Pediatricians have warned that this might actually incentivize families to seek more serious diagnoses than necessary. For all applicants, families can use the funds for anything like laptops and uniforms, but they're never allowed to resell these items. It's unclear how they will track if anyone actually does resell. Students who receive funds this year will not have to reapply in the future. Anybody on the wait list may have to reapply, but they also might just be able to update their applications. Throughout this process, the comptroller ignored concerns from educators and parents and rejected calls for stronger accountability. Private schools receiving your taxpayer dollars do not have to report graduation rates, available seats, academic results, donor information, or details about how they use these public funds. And private schools keep full control over admissions. They do not have to admit students even if they qualify for the voucher funds. And these private schools can deny entry for any reason. They do not have to follow federal special education laws and can refuse students with disabilities. Texas allocated $1 billion for this program, but that's only going to serve about 90,000 students, which is around 2% of the total student population in Texas, which is 5.5 million. It's $1 billion of public taxpayer money going to private schools with no accountability, no requirement to serve all Texas students, and no reason to prove that it's actually working. These guidelines confirm what we've all been saying from the start. These vouchers take public money out of public schools, and they leave Texas families behind. And I will always stand with parents, educators, and students who believe that our system should be transparent, accountable, and produce world-class outcomes and be accessible to every single kid in Texas. Hey, y'all.
Thank you very much for that, Senator Molly Cook. But we need much more coverage on this. We needed a lot more coverage on this as this was going through the Senate. I covered it. I saw some of the things that was done in the committee. I put some of that on the radio. But my God, and this applies to all our politicians who have the right frame of mind, who really cares, like she does care. She does care. But we have to do better at communicating. A TikTok message that got 1,111 likes, 80 comments isn't going to do it. We have to have this stuff blasted all over. I have another piece that I need to play before I get to the phones, and I need to do this, and then I'll get to the phones. And you guys are going to have just about 30 seconds to speak. But this is about Turning Point USA, and then we'll get to the phones right after this for a couple of minutes. Here we go.
say should terrify you. It definitely terrifies me. The past few days I've been inundated with tons of content poking fun at America Fest in Phoenix, Arizona. Yeah, the memes are funny. Yeah, that time where Erica Kirk called that kid a grifter is hilarious. Yeah, we're all disappointed in Nicki Minaj right now. But all this content is just engagement bait that's not magnifying what the big issue is. They are insanely organized. They have a ton of money, and they are creating a grassroots movement that the DNC is currently throwing sticks and stones at. It's not a massive conference. They are in 3,000 schools right now where kids are having face-to-face conversations with other kids telling them that the source of their problems is woke politics and progressives. And it's working. It worked in 2024, and it's getting worse. One of the biggest concerns that Gen Z has based off of statistical data is that they don't feel like they belong and they don't have community. Enter Turning Point. One of the biggest challenges that conservative politics has had over the course of the past 20 years is that a lot of voters feel like they are out of touch and it's just a bunch of old white men and they don't know how to reach young people. Enter Turning Point. Now they have a martyr. They have a real life Jesus Christ that they look up to and they feel like they need to fulfill his destiny. In the 2 weeks after Charlie Kirk's death, hundreds of students signed up to start chapters of Turning Point, and over 60,000 students signed up to join them. This is not political election strategy. This is a cultural movement, and they have hundreds of millions of dollars to fund it. Absolutely, we can point to racism and sexism for one of the main contributing factors that Kamala Harris lost the 2024 election. But the reality is that Donald Trump created a 11-point shift in 18 to 29-year-old voters, specifically amongst young white male voters, and it is getting even worse in the past year. And before you say, well, look at the most recent election wins, doesn't that mean that we're challenging it? No, because the pendulum swing that happens is atypical over the course of the past 24 years after an elected president enters office. What Turning Point is doing is very much like what Jerry Falwell did with the conservative coalition in the 1970s and 1980s, where they turned conservative politics into a single issue, abortions. And it worked. It worked for almost 40 years. The DNC has to figure out a way to challenge this, and it can't just be funny memes that are trolling Donald Trump. We have to be on the ground. And yes, there are a few organizations that are attempting to do this, but they have nowhere near the organization and the funding that Turning Point USA has. So while everybody is laughing at the memes coming from America Fest, I see something terrifying, and it should terrify you as well.
And I agree 100%. All right, we got to go to the phones. Joni, Betty, and Augie. I got to limit you to about 30 seconds because we're out of time. Joni, 30 seconds.
Good morning. So I was raised Southern Baptist, steeped in that language. So I've got a grandfather that was a minister. So regarding the service to money, I would challenge my Christian brothers and sisters to hold your officials accountable and actually demonstrate what it is to follow the 10 Commandments they're insisting is posted. Thou shalt not steal from neighboring countries. Thou shalt not covet your neighbor's natural resources. Thou shalt not destroy life. They changed that to commit murder so they can kill at will and buy judges to rule it is justified. They serve money or mammon and call it God, but is God anything? If it's anything tangible, then God is life and love, and capitalism or mammon is anti-life. Go James Tallarico. Anyway, thank you. Bye.
Thank you so kind for that, Joni. Betty, 30 seconds.
Greenland, Norway, their property. Trump keep out. But he wants his pipes running across their front yard in Venezuela, any country. My front yard, that happened to me. On Gaddafi, he went in hiding in Iran. Finally, he went home, and the people took him out in a horrible way. Pain before he died. Jingle bells. Love y'all.
Love you, Betty. Beautiful Betty. Let's go to Brother Augie. 30 seconds, Augie.
Good morning. You talked about Gaddafi, but Saddam Hussein was a friend of the United States. There's a picture of Dick Cheney with Saddam Hussein. The United States encouraged Saddam to attack Iran, but then Saddam found out that the United States was backing both Iraq and Iran, and he got mad, and he was going to say, he said that he wanted Iraqi oil. He was taking it off the U.S. dollar. We would have to buy it with euros. When he did that, that's when America decided to attack him, because back then the United States dollar was the main currency for the world. If Saddam challenged that and put another currency, that was bad. So they decided to get rid of Saddam Hussein.
Thank you for that, Augie. You know, it's amazing how nasty all this stuff is. Remember also that Manuel Antonio Noriega, the Panamanian dictator, was also a good friend of the Bushes and the CIA. Thank you for that, Augie. Got to go to the studio. Studio, come on in.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting what he just said about Saddam Hussein using euro. I didn't realize that. And now we have the other countries with the R5.
With the
All
BRICS,
trying to
yeah, it's
use
actually
their money. Yeah, all trying to use
yeah.
their money instead of using the U.S. dollar. I think I talked about that before. But everything that you talked about today is just like going through my head because it's so much to think about. You have something to say, Jeff?
No, it was a good program, Egberto. Very mesmerizing. The callers didn't even start calling till over halfway through it because they were listening to what you were saying.
That's true.
Well, thank you, my brother.
Like zoned.
Well, let me tell you, that is what I hope we do together as a team, as the listener base. That we don't just cover things in the way that it's covered on the mainstream media. We want folks to go out there and make a difference. And the way to make a difference is to know stuff. I learned every day. I'm reading every day. I constantly keep my mind learning. And because you have to learn what they're doing to us. But anyhow, happy holidays, folks. I need to say this real quick. We are going to be taped starting tomorrow till the end of the year, but be back. We are going to be having solid programming tomorrow and every day up while we're doing it taped. I'm fixing programs that I haven't aired yet. I have interviews under interviews over interviews over interviews. So we have a lot of stuff to put out there, but we are going to be, the show is not going to be called in for the next few days. But please come back to Substack. Please come back to the chat because we are going to be active here still. For those that are on the relay, remember the relay will not be on for those 5 days. So you'll have to have alternate programming. You can download it from either my site or download it from our audio port if you are one of our affiliates in the Pacifica network. Anyway, folks, got to get out of here. The rest of the program is at politicsdoneright.com/newsletter, politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. You can reach me directly, kpft@politicsdoneright.com. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, Happy everything that I forgot about. Love you all. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right. And you guys know how I end this baby. I am what? Out!
You're listening to the American Democracy Minute, keeping your government by and for the people. The Trump Department of Justice has tried for months to compel states to turn over voter registration data. A new University Research Center analysis suggests existing federal law doesn't explicitly permit it. A University of Wisconsin State Democracy Research Initiative paper outlines federal laws the DOJ is using to justify the